And we're live. Episode 43, Launch Radio, working out some technical fun stuff.
Jeff and Kira.
But Jeff and Kira, Jeff and Kira live. We Launch Radio, now it's Jeff and Kira. How are you doing, Kira?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jeff? You look frazzled, but you look like you got it under control without me being in the room. And I think you're doing a fine job.
Thank you. You know, it's a bit frazzling. I'm talking to my amazing tech person, Akira. We've got Akira,
right,
who's the tech person, and we've got Kira. So Kira and Akira. Right. But I'm talking to
That's
Akira. What's that?
That's not confusing at all.
Not confusing at all. No, not at all. I'm talking to him and trying to learn what we have is this OBS setup, which once I get going on this, it's going to really be rolling. It takes a little while to get going with it, though. It's quite a process. Right. For anybody that's never done this. I know people like to talk about doing podcasts and eventually get them rolling, but to get it going, you know, from a good tech level is not an easy process. So it can be a bit frazzling, but I have it all under.
You look super buttoned up. You'd never know.
I mean, thank you. It's perfection over here. So you look great as well there in sunny Atlanta.
Yes, we're supposed to get another hurricane this weekend. It's coming. We don't get hit. It's more like we'll get the rain, like the bands after it. Yeah. So I actually have to pay attention to the weather now. Like there's a Category 4 hurricane hitting Mexico, and that we get the rain from. So,
wow,
it's the thing I didn't have to worry about before. Whereas I'm like, oh, I see now we're getting rain this weekend because of a hurricane. It's all the things you don't think about when you live in the West Coast. You just think about fires and earthquakes.
Fires and earthquakes. I guess when you're when you're there, you're on the East Coast, you have to deal with hurricanes. It's a whole different set of
crazy. It's crazy.
Natural disasters.
Have you bought? I went out before I came back home today. I bought some alcohol and some snacks, and I'm gearing up for the next debate tonight. I think it's going to be fascinating.
The next debate is tonight. Vice President debate, right?
Yeah, and I forgot next week. I completely forgot. Next week is the town hall.
The town hall debate.
Town hall debate, which is always, that was when in 2016 when Trump was kind of hovering over Hillary.
Yeah.
Forgot that we did the town hall one. So this will be interesting with COVID and Biden and the whole craziness that's going on right now. I know Pence doesn't want to use the fiberglass, but I think Kamala does. And there's this like, I mean, since we last spoke, there's been just like a flurry of who doesn't have COVID. I think when I texted you the other night, I was like, you're only cool if you get COVID now, because everybody has it now in the White House, you know?
I mean, yeah, you're like, you said like all the cool kids have COVID. I mean, I think that there's a level of, you know, we're getting to a place now where obviously like more and more people are getting it. You know, and we especially see it because a lot of leaders and such are getting it. Johan just checked in. What's up, Johan? And I think that because that's happening, it's bringing it especially like to the forefront of things now. And, you know, I mean, who are the reasons? I mean, like, there's like how many people in the White House now have it? Aren't there like?
I think it's 20. I think it's up to 20 now.
Gosh.
Which is kind of a lot, you know, when you think about it. That would be considered a super spreader.
Yeah, I think it's considered a super spreader. And you know, there's all sorts of like conspiracies raving about it now that you know, maybe Trump, there's people talking about he could have faked it, which I don't believe at all. And other things like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's concerning, and now they have these debates coming up, one of which is tonight. So the vice president debate tonight can go forward. They both tested negative today. Kamala Harris and Mike Pence both tested negative today. But the plan next week, I think, is still to go with the town hall presidential debate, right?
It is, but what's interesting? I'm hearing reports, and I don't know if you've seen it. At first, it was like, how sometimes you'll read an article and you'll be like, I question this. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure this is real. And you have to kind of dig a little deeper or wait for another news source to pick it up. I heard it this morning or last night, I believe, from like Vogue, like why Vogue is covering the politics, but I guess why not? At this point, everybody is. But they were saying that inside people, including Don Jr., is getting gravely concerned about Trump's thought process and concerned about, you hear that COVID can have a neurological type of, the gentleman, Chris Como, I think it was, or the brother of the New York governor. Yeah, he had it. And he was like on CNN reporting how it is to have it in real time. And he was saying how he felt like he was just like, sorry for the cat. No, sorry.
Perfect.
Let the cat walk around.
That's great.
He wants to scratch me.
That's great.
But he said he felt like he was losing his mind.
Really?
Because I think the fever gets to a point where, and I guess I then saw this story come up just recently, like an hour ago, where it's now getting a little bit more traction of it being like a real thing, where the staffers are getting worried that Trump was on a copious amount of steroids, and steroids do have can bring on mood swings.
Yeah.
They're saying that his behavior is pretty erratic. We saw that with his tweets recently, that his tweets are contradictory from one moment to the next, and he's kind of all over the place, and but how do you take his phone away? Is my question. That's like out of my cold dead hand when it comes to Trump and his phone. So,
well, I think
if he's not,
I think
if he's not neurologically there, how do you debate exactly? I think we're at day 5 of his illness. I think they said it starts to peak and get really bad.
Yeah.
In the next couple days. I mean, he still has a fair amount to go with this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that he's obviously on some drugs from the hospital, and what they say, I think it was like a steroid or something. I heard they put him on.
Yeah.
And these drugs tend to, I don't know about the making you mentally kind of not there. I think the bigger concern is they tend to make you more aggressive about things. So he was doing a couple days ago like a long scroll of all caps tweets. Not that he hasn't done all caps in the past, but it was a long scroll of all caps tweets, which seemed very kind of overly, like, if Trump isn't aggressive enough, this was like overkill, And then he got back, which, I mean, he could have stayed, at the hospital some more days. He wanted to get right back to work. And, I think that there's definitely some signs that, I mean, who knows what's going on in his mind, but of what the medication can do and then making you over aggressive. And so I see more aggression a little bit than normal. But I think that, and I think that you have to talk about, he holds the like nuclear button, Well,
right. I mean, I guess that's the problem where do you enact the 25th, amendment at that point where, or do you wait it out and hope, because here's a guy who already is a little bit volatile, and demands respect and demands action and demands things. When you add in a steroid, to your point, it can increase that. Have you ever been on a steroid? I have. I've had pneumonia 3 times and I've had steroids. I don't remember being aggressive though.
Really, I've heard like different different steroids can make you aggressive. That's one of the main. They make
And I'm
you.
sure, I mean, I'm sure he's on some serious steroids for him to be able to
Yeah.
walk out on his own accord out of a hospital 3 days after having COVID.
Uh-huh.
I'm not entirely sure that's a normal thing with this virus that you're able to just walk away 3 days later.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
he's on the remdesivir, um,
right.
dexamethasone. Um, I think that's a steroid, right? I'm not sure. Maybe someone watching can clarify,
It
but
sounds steroidy.
yeah, I think it's steroid. But yeah, I mean, I think that one of the big side effects is, I mean, they make you feel like Superman, like you can do anything. But that like roll of tweets was very aggressive, and then he, um, I thought that leaving the hospital was a little early, obviously, and then I thought he went and he rode with the Secret Service the car, to
So how
wave
do you
for
feel
fans.
about this? I know I have a feeling that's going to be a point of contention tonight and probably for next week. How do you think that went in terms of people's reaction that he would take COVID possibly on a lighter stance where I beat it, I'm going to say hello to the fans and to, my supporters, and then taking his mask off. Do you feel that was a little
All right.
too much, too soon, or do you feel that he has every right if he's feeling better?
I'm gonna sum this up, everything here. I feel that the problem that what is happening right now, that is the core of the problem, is Trump and likes to, I mean, this is how he's always been. He likes to promote optimism.
Right.
Optimism. Even if it's there's reality and there's optimism,
Right.
and painting a rosy picture. So Trump is always going to go in the direction of having an optimistic, rosy point of view, which a lot of people would say being optimistic about things in life, like that's good. Like you should have optimism. You're going to recover. You can get over it. Like you can, that's the Trump thing. Like, you're going to fight through it. But the problem with that is there's also the reality of what's really happening. And walking that, I said this on Twitter, like walking that line in between those two is a very tricky line to walk, because you want people to not be so scared that they're just mentally destroying themselves, but you also want them to understand the reality. And I think that's in COVID been the hardest part for Trump in particular, because and I don't like to take sides on all this stuff, but I feel like when there was like Obama, for example, was very good at kind of saying we need to be concerned, the empathetic side, like we need to be aware of that, but also try to keep your good spirits, don't let it like take you down.
Right.
Walking that line is hard for Trump because he wants to just say, we're going to get over it. We're going to fight through it. We're going to work out. It's really hard for him to do that. So he takes a lot of heat for that. And then there was the conflict between where Mark Meadows was saying, one thing, Mark Meadows was saying it's dire, it's not as good. And then from Trump directly, there was like a conflicting message, like, I'm good, I'm recovering. But one thing I'll say about that is I think they almost want a conflicting message. I think they kind of want that out there, because then you've got Mark Meadows saying there's concern, which they want people to know that to take this seriously. But then at the same time, for the optimists, Trump can be like, I'm going to get through it. I'm fine. I'm good. Because some people like a lot of his base and people like that. So I think in a way, maybe that could have been on purpose, where they want both, because kind of both are always at play. And then the media, a lot of them were talking about there's two mixed messages here, but I think the mixed messages almost seem to be kind of on purpose. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of interesting when you were talking, because it reminds me, and I want to get your thoughts on it, if that's the case, because sometimes he does very well in playing both sides and saying this is serious, but the power of positivity, will always supersede, and we're going to be just fine. Yeah. So is he seeing, going back to kind of a Scott Adams type of view where there's two movies, or one movie, two screens, is he seeing both screens and choosing to take the positive route for our own benefit? Or does he do it because he's not in touch with reality?
What do I believe?
Yeah.
I believe that he's both clearly and is taking the positive route.
Okay.
That's what I believe.
I mean, I think so too. I think it's what I think he struggles is because he's the leader of the free world. By not speaking candidly and saying, here's the facts, we have no idea what the facts are. So then there's this misinformation constantly. Yeah. So then you've got the left saying he's lying and the right saying, oh, it's nothing, don't worry about it, it's just the flu, because that's what he's saying. So now that he's saying that, you've saw Twitter's taking some tweets down, Facebook is starting to take some of the posts down that say when he makes a claim like that, because those companies, and we've talked about big tech before, if they allow these unproven statements to stay up, it actually sways people. So for example, I remember during the debate, he was talking about, I think Biden brought it up as like a side jab about the injecting bleach.
Yep.
And Trump was like, oh, I was just being, facetious, but you can't be when you're present. That's the problem.
Well, his answer to that question was bad. He said it was sarcasm.
It was sarcasm. But the problem is you can't be sarcastic when you're talking to the public about a very serious virus.
Yeah.
And the problem is people went out injecting themselves with bleach. That's the problem. Do you know what I mean? So like, as much as he would want to stay the persona that he is, which is this like funny entertainment type of mogul, you're also running a country and people are listening to what you're saying and literally taking word for word for what you say, just like the people that read the Bible word for word and believe it. Yeah. Like there was a Jonah and an art, and a whale. And, there's those people that literally read it word for word. And there's people that literally listen to his word for word. And he takes the road of, oh, they know I'm kidding. They know I'm sarcastic. It's like, no. You're giving them way too much credit. You're giving every American way too much credit that they think that you're just being positive because they're actually believing the things that are coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Is the problem.
Well, people, I don't know why he used the word, I don't know why he summed it up as sarcasm when he was talking about that, because that's not what I saw when I was watching that. So
no, when you watch it, it was clearly not. I mean, he clearly was saying how, this could be an effective use. And that was definitely not sarcasm. I think he misspoke when he said that, but I think it just comes down to what are you supposed to believe?
Yeah.
Because let's say right now we're in a very tricky spot as a country. We've got all of these protests and an election year that's very, full of turmoil and very tumultuous. But the side that we don't see and is not talked about at all is that we're right now at the weakest level that we've ever been, probably since 9/11.
Right.
And the reason I say that is because of this riff, because everyone's just like, it's so chaotic.
Yep.
And everyone's going after the shiny nickel or whatever, it's every day it's a new topic that we're all talking about.
Yep.
there are foreign adversaries that are like licking their chops, ready to pounce. And to be honest, when you look back in history, the Roman Empire, Ottoman Empire, I mean, these are empires that are beyond what the US could even possibly be.
Right.
I mean, they were world owning, and they don't exist anymore. So there's a reason they were dominated. I mean, someone found their weakest point and came in and dominated them, and conquered them.
Yeah.
It's very possible in 2020 that as we are being shown this movie over here, the foreign whatever comes in and actually crushes whatever we have left of democracy. And it's something that's not talked about. Nobody really seems to be real concerned, but it's like, that's probably happening while we're sitting here, and there's not anything we can do about it. It's just like, don't be surprised if something happens. And I don't know what that means. I just mean it in the sense that like, there are countries in the world outside of the US.
Yeah.
There are countries outside the US that hate the US.
Yeah.
And we forget that because we're so isolated over here. Mm-hmm. That we forget that there are actual countries that would want to do harm. And we're at a really good pivotal point right now for those countries to do that. So I wouldn't, not that I'm ever wanting that to happen at all. It's just more of like it's possible that we're at a really good spot for someone to launch their own agenda on the US.
So we need to be aware of that.
I think we need to be aware of it. Yeah, I think it needs to be. Obviously we have CIA and Pentagon, and we have those special forces and intelligence, but we also had that for 9/11 too, and that was snuck in completely under radar. But I mean, it's
the concern though is not as much physical war and attack now, as much as it is the powers of persuasion and the internet and misinformation and causing people, it's like the social dilemma again, and causing people to dislike each other or fight because of misinformation. And if a foreign entity, whomever, can, there's all the rumors about Russia and China and everywhere else, but if one of those entities can come in using those powers, and it's the powers of persuasion, which Scott Adams wrote a book about and talks about all the time, it's using, and who's the guy that the power of persuasion? There's this guy who's like the power of persuasion main guy who
I forgot his name. You're right. I forgot his name.
He wrote Persuasion, which was a recent book, and he wrote the original book on it. But they would use those, those powers to cause online disinformation. In essence, cause all this fighting within a country, which could lead to just the country kind of eating itself, and then be able to kind of take over using those forces. And I think that's the point you're getting at. And I think it's a good point. Yes, but back to rewinding what you were saying a second ago about what Trump was saying about saying different things where two movies can interpret him differently. Yes, like he says things that people can take out of context, and he allows the media to take him out of context as well.
Right.
And, but their job is also to write stories about him. So it becomes this thing where you end up with a split country where people see different things based on, a perception which can be interpreted in two different ways. And you end up with people just thinking each other are crazy and then starting to fight. And then it ends up with turmoil within the country. And you have to be aware of how much there can be foreign influence on that type of thing. And I think that's the point that you were getting to, that you're making. And it's a very valid and good point. So the best thing that he can be about a lot of this stuff is just very, very transparent, which is very hard to do.
That's not exactly his forte.
No, it's not exactly his forte.
I mean, I think who was it? Hope, before they had gotten COVID, I think he probably, if he had tested for COVID before her, it probably we would have never known.
Well, now they're saying that they won't say when his last, before he got sick, they won't say when his last negative test is, because they don't want to dig in the, all the medical stuff to find out. So there's raising a lot of suspicion around that, because they don't want to go back through a week and a half and look in that. And yet they just released this statement that they have all these documents about Russia and Obama that are years of going back through stuff,
Right.
but they can't go back 5 days and look at when his last COVID test is. So there's a bit of contradictory stuff going on there too, because now they're going.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think they're claiming HIPAA guidelines where they don't have to by law release a patient's records of any kind, which they're covered by law, and then. However, they're able to go back to 2016 randomly and pull out of a hat some Russia investigation, Hillary Clinton emails. I like to live in 2020, and whatever happened in 2016. I mean, we could all go back to 2001 or 2004 and talk about whatever. But I'm just not entirely sure what that does, except pull the eyes somewhere else,
right.
And that's really what this is about, is pulling your eyeballs in a different direction. And I think that's why there were conspiracy theories of is he actually doing, is this real? Maybe he, we haven't heard a peep about Proud Boys. We haven't heard a peep about white supremacy or tax returns since he got, infected with COVID.
Yeah. The conspiracy theories form because people don't know what to think and believe and with anything anymore. I mean, it's just, nobody knows what to think about anything and what to believe anymore. And I think that's kind of sad. And I think it gets us to a bigger picture of just what is happening with online and social media and information and how do we work that out? It's like we've talked about prior. There needs to be something where people just aren't feeling so misinformed about everything literally all the time, Yeah,
because you can't, just reading one article is not enough. You have to do your own investigative work to know every angle of that article to actually formulate a true opinion. And I think, to your point, I think we're at a very pinnacle point right now, very big turning point when it comes to the role of social networks and media inside scoop and information, because, like we talked about last week, with Social Dilemma and Facebook's role and all of that. Today, I just read before we jumped on that there's an anti-Facebook ad that was purchased that will run during the VP debate tonight.
Really?
So political ads, it's not even about politics anymore. Now there's anti-social media ads that are being played. And I think we read before we jumped on here that Facebook is going to be pulling all political ads after November 3rd. Now, why after the election would they pull all political ads? It's because they're assuming there's going to be a debacle of election results, and they're probably not wanting either campaign to be pushing this democracy is dead, you can't trust mail-in ballots, you can't trust because essentially if you can't trust your own voting, your democracy is now on really thin ice. So if the candidates start pushing this rhetoric of you can't trust your own voting, we're no better than any other country at that point. So I think that's why Facebook is we're pulling all political ads right after the election, because we don't want to be the social media,
they don't want to be spreading the voting, whatever. If there's a big debate about how correct the voting was after the election, they don't want to be the ones spreading ads for both sides saying the other side screwed up the voting, basically.
Right.
Facebook wants out of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like post office, and I mean, it's gonna, it's gonna be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. All
Let's just put
right,
it that way.
for
For weeks,
sure.
but yeah.
Well, that was a good check-in. I know we're still working on our tech stuff. We went a little longer today. We went a half hour or so, but I know that in the future, as I continue to get this going, I was on set all day yesterday, and I'm wanting to really work through this and get more up to. But I think we're going to go on Wednesdays at p.m. 5 your time, and that will be our time, so people know. Wednesdays, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern, where we can update on everything, life. Everybody's talking about the news right now, so it's the thing. We still like to do our other topics, which we will. It's just we're such in the heat of the election that it's a thing to.
Well, and the other thing is, I think it's important to note for viewers and listeners that we will be doing it live, so there won't be any afterward editing. So when we have guests on, it's going to be like a caveat of, hey, this is live TV. We are not edit. If you say something that you don't want out there, check that at the door.
Right.
Because it will be live and we're no longer doing taping of anything. It's going to be, so that's why we're keeping a schedule of every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then 3 p.m. Pacific.
Let's do 2.
Or 2 o'clock, sorry.
No worries.
2 and 5, yes.
2 and
5. So
5.
5 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific.
That's it.
So it's all going to be live. So sorry.
Oh, good. Perfect plan. And this is great. We're coming along. I'm glad we've now got this up and running, as you do. And we'll keep it going next week. Thanks for the few people that jumped in. We had a few guest visitors chatting. No, I do not think that Trump, or wait, do you think that Trump really has COVID? Yes, I think that Trump really has COVID. I don't know why people.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, just to add to that, there's no way that this was ever good for his campaign. I know people are like, oh, the sympathy vote. And like when Reagan got shot and people, I'm like, no, Reagan and Trump are very different people. There's no way that they would have pulled this in order to help his campaign or for him to not debate. That this was not a good thing for him at all, for him to get COVID. Let's put it that way.
Not at all. And somebody was like, well, how do you know? How do you know that he really had COVID? And I'm like,
well, back to our point where it's like, how do you know the sky's blue? How do you know that? I mean, we're at that point where we're questioning literally reality. And you, at some point, you in your own brain, and this happens individually, you have to make a call of what you trust and what you don't trust.
That's right.
If you live in a world of like, nothing's real, you will literally go insane. So, I mean, you will lose your brain and be in like a psych ward. I mean, that's schizophrenia at its core. So you've got to have what reality is to you. And you've got to say, I trust this. I may be wrong, and that's okay. And be done with it. Because if you're wishy-washy all the time, your brain is going to get fried. So just keep that in mind.
That's right. And you need to, the one final thing I'll say is you just need to keep in mind the consistencies of things, because if you're speculating that he doesn't really have COVID-19, that's your speculation. And then the next day, you're paranoid that he's in the car with the Secret Service because he's going to give them COVID-19. You're conflicting what you said the prior day. So your logic is going out the window. So I'm saying he really has it, and then I'm saying it's not good that he rode in the car with the Secret Service. I thought it was unnecessary.
Like, stick with one. Correct. Stick with one theory and then just go with it.
Otherwise,
that's it.
Yeah, it just becomes illogical at that point. So anyway, hi, Lee Miller. Thanks for checking in. End of the show. You got to jump. Jeff and Kira Live, episode 43. It's good to see you. Good chat.
Good to see you.
Do it again next week. 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. See you next week.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Enjoy.
Kira.